Hello, folks. I am Hank Chambers. I'm serving as the head judge for this hearing. It's great to see you all. I'm here from the University of Richmond Law School, and I've been doing this for a couple of decades, and I think I've seen you all before somewhere. Our other judges are...
Good morning, or I should say, yes, well, it's good morning yet. I'm Barry Anderson. I'm an Associate Justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court, been a judge in this competition for many years. Years ago, I had the opportunity to serve as an assistant coach, in a team from Hutchinson, Minnesota. And so I have some appreciation for the stress you're all under, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. We're going to have a great time this morning.
I'm Ann Zinkin. I'm a career law clerk at the New Hampshire Supreme Court. I've been here for about 21 years. Prior to that, I was in private practice for about 12 years as an employment litigator, and I've been judging at the state level for somewhere between 5 and 10 years, and this is my first time at nationals. I can't wait to talk to you all.
All right, so Unit 4, tell us who you are.
Hello, we are the seniors of Unit 4 from Team Indiana. My name is Kyle Bragg, and I look forward to attending the University of Florida to study economics and statistics.
My name is Max Anderson, and I look forward to attending Indiana University to double major in business management and political science.
My name is Bradley Kelly. I will be attending Indiana University to major in political science and attain a minor in business administration.
My name is Nikhil Datar. I will be attending Harvard to study computer science and statistics. And today we are joined by our teacher, Mrs. Janet Chandler.
Good to see y'all this morning. Good to see y'all. Well, we've got Unit 4, so I'll read the question and then we will hear your opening. Question 1. It would be inconsistent with the constitutional separation of the executive and legislative powers to let the prerogative pardon power be exercised by the latter. What were the framers' reasons for giving the president the pardon power, and do you agree or disagree with them? According to the framer, James Wilson, if the president abuses the pardon power, he can be impeached and prosecuted. Do you agree with Wilson? Why or why not? And in your opinion, what constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors? We're ready for your opening.
Framer James Uredzel argued,
Men are often obnoxious to a lawful conviction, but are entitled to a merciful interposition.
Framers drew upon historical precedent when implementing the pardon power. The Virginia Charter of 1609 gave its governor pardon powers similar to an English monarch. The framers agreed with Sir William Blackstone that powers to pardon and judge were to be kept separate, and felt pardons could successfully diffuse tension.
In Federalist 74, Alexander Hamilton argued the offer of a pardon to insurgents may restore tranquility upon the Commonwealth. The first successful pardon occurred following the 1791 Whiskey Rebellion in response to an excise tax on whiskey.
the framers granted the executive the pardon power instead of granting it to judges to separate the powers to pardon and to judge. Recent events have provided additional support for the founders' beliefs.
According to Reuters research organization, 3,613 cases from 2008 through 2018 forced states to discipline wayward judges. This highlights the potential danger in granting judges the pardon power.
Despite expansion of the pardon power, my colleagues and I agree with the founders' initial reasons for its implementation.
Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution gives the President the power to grant reprieves and pardons.
Kyle and I agree with Framer James Wilson's statement. As the President should be held accountable to the rule of law, the founders themselves knew a president could abuse this power because of the British royal prerogative.
Furthermore, the pardon power is broad yet not unlimited. A check to the misuse of the pardon is impeachment, which makes Framer James Wilson's statement correct. I agree with James Wilson, not just for the historical reasons provided by the founders, but due to United States versus Nixon, which found executive privilege cannot impede the administration of justice.
Nikhil and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues. The power to pardon is an executive action and was given to the president in the executive branch, not the legislative branch. This unilateral power has no provision for legislative interference.
The Constitution requires civil officers to be removed if convicted of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Nikhil and I believe the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors is not restricted to indictable criminality, but also moral violations.
Precedent for this definition was set in 1803, when federal judge John Pickering was impeached and removed due to mental instability, allegedly resulting in unlawful rulings. Similarly, in 1804, Justice Samuel Chase was impeached for condemning President Jefferson's attempts to remove Federalist judges, where the trial managers cited that he acted as an electioneering partisan.
Despite not actually committing any crimes in both instances, impeachment occurred because judges failed to utilize the moral strength needed for public office.
Max and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues. The phrase high crimes and misdemeanors should be restricted to criminal offenses defined by Title 18 of the United States Code.
George Mason's initial proposal for Article 2, Section 4 included the term maladministration rather than high crimes and misdemeanors. However, James Madison saw it as too vague, since it granted the Senate immense power for removal from office. Nevertheless, our unit finds the same degree of vagueness evident, as high crimes and misdemeanors remains undefined.
Framer James Madison best articulated the need for an impeachment process, stating,
"A good magistrate shall not fear impeachment. A bad one ought to be kept in fear of them. Shall any man be above justice?" We are now finished with our prepared testimony and ready to move on to follow-up questioning.
Thank you. I'm curious, should the president be given monarchical powers?
Could you define what more monarchical powers would be, in your opinion?
Well, you noted in your opening that the power of pardon is similar to the power that English monarchs had. So should a president in a republic be given monarchical powers?
I
I
think
do
we
believe, go ahead, Kyle.
I think we saw the need for the idea of a unitary executive to be installed after the failures of the Articles of Confederation, which proved the need for a serious increase of executive power. And the United States pardon power takes a lot of precedent from the British pardon power, because after the Danby pardon in British law, we saw that the British Parliament added the check to impeachment that we now see in American constitutional law pertaining the use of the pardon. So therefore, I do think the framers were right to draw upon the monarchical power utilized by the British when formulating our pardon power.
I would respectfully disagree with my colleague. I do not believe that our president should be given monarchical powers, and I would actually advocate for a change to the pardon system similar to that on the state level of the governor pardon, where we could have some sort of parole board or executive committee to kind of jurisdict the pardon so that the president is not given these purely monarchical powers.
I agree with my colleague Kyle. I do believe the president should be given the absolute power in pardons, except I do also agree with Framer Alexander Hamilton, who stated that the pardon power in cases of treason should also be having some sort of ruling by the Senate, in which the Senate actually has to approve of the pardon for the pardon to actually pass.
I agree with my colleague Max in the sense that the president should be given some sort of pardon power. However, it should also be restricted in the sense that there should be other people that give some insight to the president as to their pardon, similar to that in Poland, where the president in Poland actually gets some input from not only the judge where the individual is being tried in, but also from outside individuals who work with them.
But let me jump in here and follow up on my colleague's question and your answer here. You're arguing that the pardon power should be restricted. At least some of you are arguing that the pardon power should be restricted. But you told us in your statement that the Whiskey Rebellion was an example of a tranquility-oriented pardon. It seems to me that some of these are controversial, and if you restrict the president's power, Gerald Ford doesn't pardon Richard Nixon. The Whiskey Rebellion pardon maybe doesn't happen. The Civil War pardons don't happen. Isn't that the downside of restricting the pardon power?
I do believe that can be a downside, like you said, yes. However, I will say that in the sense of not or having some sort of restrictions on it, we would limit some sort of the public outcries that we had when it came down to President Ford pardoning President Richard Nixon, that people were not for his pardoning. People were more against that. They wanted to see President Nixon get tried for Watergate. And so from that sense, if there were to have been some sort of restrictions, we might have limited some of the issues that came from other pardons, like the one of Nixon.
Additionally, I believe that restricting the pardon would sort of decrease the polarization and political aspects of the pardon. And this can be seen in recent years, especially where President Donald Trump pardoned political allies such as Michael Flynn and Roger Stone. And this would sort of eliminate these political pardons and sort of make it more of a legal process.
All for the president having complete control of the pardon power, but I do believe more measures need to be taken to actually prevent stuff that my colleague Max has stated, such as pardoning political allies from occurring. We can look to South Africa. They have a provision that states that pardons cannot be given to defendants unless they've spent a certain amount of years in prison already, such as 10 years. And I do believe that if a similar rule was implemented, then the president would still have complete control, but would not be able to pardon individuals such as political allies that have only recently been convicted.
What do you think, Judge Zinkin?
So my question is about whether you think that impeachment has been an effective limit on the pardon power.
I don't think it has been much of a effective limit on the pardon power in the sense of with President Trump pardoning political allies, President Clinton pardoned political allies, and we never saw an impeachment come forward for any of those pardons. We never saw somebody question it in the slightest. It was nothing more but, something from the media saying that they had pardoned it, and it was somebody was for it or against it. So in that sense, there has not really been very effective with regard to checking the pardon power.
I completely agree with my colleague Bradley. This was a major discussion of the framers. George Mason was very skeptical of giving the pardon power to the president, but James Madison stated that impeachment would be an effective check. However, we saw in the second impeachment of President Trump, which was said to be the most bipartisan impeachment, we only had 7 Republicans join the Democrats. And so because of the highly political nature of today's Congress, impeachment is not an effective measure to check the pardon.
The use of impeachment has never been a very effective process. There have only been 4 impeachment trials, President Jackson, President Clinton, and the 2 against President Trump, and none resulted in a conviction by the Senate. However, I do think it is worth mentioning that impeachment as a practice is just as its presence in the Constitution prevents a lot of crimes from occurring. Presidents do not utilize the pardon power nearly as much as they would if there was no impeachment check in place. So while no impeachment trial has effectively checked on a specific pardon used by the president, just the presence of its language in the Constitution has served as a safeguard from presidents seizing too much executive power.
Well, I agree with my colleague Kyle in theory. I would also argue that the preemptive pardon has sort of been the way that presidents have been able to circumvent impeachment trials. And this is especially seen in Watergate, where Ford was able to pardon President Nixon before he was really able to be charged with his crimes.
Let's talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead, Hank.
Have you seen any pardons that you believe should have triggered impeachment?
I have not seen any pardons that would have necessarily triggered impeachment, in my opinion, especially because of our political world that we live in. It doesn't seem very surprising that, for example, recently with President Trump pardoning Michael Flynn and Roger Stone, it doesn't seem like much of a surprise because they were political allies. They helped him out. And for that reason, it doesn't seem like it would be very surprising.
I would agree with my colleague Bradley and also cite the language around the pardon power as why it's not really an impeachable offense, as the pardon power has been granted to the president for any federal crime, as long as this person is not in an ongoing impeachment trial. So therefore, it really isn't maladministration by the president to pardon political allies. However, this is a broken part in the system that does need to be resolved.
Let me ask a question about the impeachment process designed by the framers. The judiciary was largely cut out of that altogether. Why did they do that, and was that wise?
I don't necessarily think that it was wise for them to cut out the judiciary, because the judges are supposed to be impartial, and having some of that impartiality involved in our government a lot more would help limit the issues of partisanship that we have seen today in our Congress.
One of the biggest.
All right, we appreciate it. Got to cut it off there. Thank y'all very much for the presentation. Colleagues, you want to give some comments?
I do. I really, I thought your opening statement was very well done. And one of the things I really appreciated during the answering of the questions is how you disagreed with each other. So I was able to hear a conversation among the four of you, which I found really interesting. And you're the first team that I've seen do that. So I thought that was pretty impressive. And I enjoyed your use of historical and current examples. I thought that there were some questions that I thought you could have gotten more in depth with, but I thought overall you did a fabulous job. Thank you.
So I found the reference to the Virginia Charter from 1609 to be interesting. That's an undercited source and I think useful here. You're also the citation to Blackstone. I pushed you a little bit on this question of the limitations on the president's pardon and whether that might actually, if we go down that road, that might actually limit the more controversial uses of the president's pardon power. The fact is that some very controversial pardon decisions look much better in retrospect. Nixon's pardon of Ford, or Ford's pardon of Nixon, is probably an example of that, although even that's disputed. But so I thought that was a useful exchange. We talked about impeachments not being very effective. I think one thing we lose sight of is the impeachment of the president has not been very effective in the sense that we haven't had a successful one. But of course, impeachment powers have also been used to remove judges and other government officials. So I don't know that it undercuts the argument, but it's a different aspect of it. Strong presentation. I enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I agree. I like what you all did in the opening in terms of giving us some background, going back to Whiskey Rebellion and then bringing it to today. The disagreement, I think, is perfectly reasonable and perfectly legitimate. In fact, one of the things that we like to see, because it makes sense, is for folks to think on their own. And as a consequence, no reason to believe that you all should necessarily agree about these issues. What y'all saw, because we hit you with a couple questions on it, was, well, what are the limitations, right? When we start thinking about the pardon power as being a monarchical power, we think, well, the monarch can simply pardon whomever she or he wants to pardon, which would suggest almost no limitation on the pardon power. But you all stepped in and said, well, but it should be limited in some way. And that makes a fair amount of sense. So I liked a lot of what I saw. I think y'all recognized in some situations where you kind of argued yourselves into a kind of a cul-de-sac, but you made yourself, but you got out of it. So that's what I like to see, and a lot of really, really good and hard thinking. And of course, Bradley, it's always good to see on your ceiling, join or die.
Yes.
Gotta love it. All righty, y'all have a good one. It was a fantastic beginning, and I hope y'all the best of luck moving forward. And who knows, maybe we'll see you on Monday.